Welcome to Uneasy Harmony Part 3. The chord we're discussing here is the Major 7 sharp 5. Let's begin. The Major 7 sharp 5 is constructed by stacking two major thirds and a minor third. While it's not the most common chord, the structure as a whole remains rather cohesive, especially compared to the diminished Major 7 from Part 2. This is because each interval in the sequence categorically sounds like thirds, while the chord from Part 2 is technically made of thirds. The augmented third makes the sequence sound as if it leaps to a fourth. From the root, our Major 7 sharp 5 contains a major third, augmented fifth, which sounds like a minor 6, and a major 7th. So we can think of it as an augmented triad with an added major 7. Like the previous chords in this series, this one has a tense side and a stable side. On the tense side, we have C augmented. The term tense is used loosely here, as an augmented triad is not tense in the same way that a diminished triad is tense. To me, at least, the unstable diminished triad creates an unambiguous feeling of anticipation that points to a particular direction. The augmented triad is also unstable, but it feels more dreamy and ambiguous, and does not point to a particular direction, almost as if it's just floating or hovering. Moving on to the stable side, we have an E major triad. This side is bright and warm, and is more resolved than the augmented counterpart. So what does this tell us about the Major 7 sharp 5's chord quality? Well, on one hand, we have the intriguing sound of augmented, while on the other, we have the warm, familiar, and stable sound of major. When combined, these sounds complement each other quite nicely. The result seems ambiguous, dreamy, and ethereal. It's a bit tense, but not volatile. It's unstable, but not urgent. Next, we'll discuss possible techniques for your writing process. We'll address this in three main categories, namely texture, harmonic features, and melodic features. In music, texture broadly refers to how sound is presented. There is both rhythmic texture and harmonic texture. Rhythmic texture examines how often sound occurs within a given time span. If many sounds occur in a short time span, the texture is rhythmically dense. If few sounds occur in a long time span, the texture is rhythmically sparse. Dynamics and articulation can also have an impact on rhythmic texture. We can use short sounds, long sounds, and mixed sounds. Short sounds, such as block chords, have a quick attack and release. Expressively, this may suggest a sudden, jarring event. Long sounds, like sustained chords, can stir up a feeling of anticipation by emerging gradually from a soft dynamic. We can use short sounds to finalize long sounds. Here, the short sound creates a moment of impact that resolves tension built by the long sound. Lastly, mixed sounds occur when short sounds are used to form a long sound. With certain dynamic schemes, mixed sounds can create a sense of anticipation that carries rhythmic energy. When it comes to harmony, texture refers to the sound of a chord voicing. In general, closed voicings create a richer, more complex texture. Open voicings, on the other hand, produce smoother textures. We can create one of many open voicings by displacing the third, E, up an octave. Let's compare. Note that this chord can be analyzed as an E over C slash chord. I was looking for historical examples of this chord's use, and found one in the Jazz Theory book by Mark Levane. On page 290, Levane cites a passage from Jeremy Kern's All the Things You Are. Here, the A-flat Major 7 sharp 5 is voiced as a slash chord that supports the 3rd and 7th scale degree from the melody. Harmonic texture also ties into our two sides approach. For example, we can emphasize one side over another using pitch doubling or octave displacement. Let's compare two examples. Here, pitches from the stable side are doubled and displaced in the bass. This forms a smooth power chord that keeps the voicing centered. In this example, pitches are confined to a narrow range. The minor second and minor sixth create a richer texture that is less stable. So with texture covered, let's move to harmonic features and uses of our chord. We already have a historical example of this chord's use. In this case, it functions as an alternative color or flavor of A-flat major. With that said, we could also treat this chord as a preparation for a cadence. There are many possibilities here, so I'll mention just a few, but a more detailed list is in the PDF linked below. One possibility involves lowering the root C to B while keeping all else stationary. The result is E major second inversion. You can also resolve to C major 7 by moving G sharp down to G. If we omit the major 7, B, we'll notice that the 10th side is just one half step away from various major and minor triads. As mentioned, moving the root down by half step yields E major. Moving it up by half step, we get C sharp minor. If we move the third down by half step, we get A flat major. Move it up by half step, we get F minor. If we move the fifth down, we get C major. And lastly, moving the fifth up yields A minor. This type of half-step interplay between augmented, major, and minor appears in Liszt's 1883 piano solo shown here. For more info on this, see the description. Otherwise, we'll discuss melodic features and techniques. For my writing process, I consider two general strategies for building melody. One being arpeggio-based variation, and two being chord scale variation. To start with arpeggio variation, use an ascending and descending root position pattern that fits within your desired pitch range. From here, you can alter it by starting and ending on any pitch in the sequence. You can also alternate between neighboring pitches or skip pitches that appear in the natural order of the sequence. Let's check some examples. This example is constructed mostly of skips or leaps. This example highlights the use of alternating pitches, along with the natural progression of the arpeggio. Ultimately, melodies combine steps and leaps, so simply use the chord as a guide and experiment with patterns that you like. Next, we have chord scale variations. For this approach, consider the following question. From which scale is this chord derived? Or, in which scales does this chord appear? In this case, A melodic minor fits nicely with C major 7 sharp 5 because it contains the root, third, sharp 5th, and 7th of our chord. Since the chord is built on C, treat the scale as if it's built on C. This is the third mode of A melodic minor, known as Lydian augmented due to its raised 4th and 5th scale degrees. With the scale, we're granted 3 additional pitches. This allows for more variation without straying too far from our initial source material. Here's an example. The pitches in red are from the chord, while the pitches in blue are exclusive to the scale. This is one of my favorite examples. We begin with a major 7 sharp 5 pattern, but later incorporate the F sharp from the scale, which creates a shift in color. To me, it makes this passage sound sweeter or more delicate while still feeling mystical. So now that we've covered some techniques, let's listen to an excerpt. Starting with texture, let's break it down. The rhythmic texture of this excerpt is grouped into 5 sections: sparse, dense, sparse, dense, and sparse once more. Throughout the excerpt, strings perform long sounds to support melodic material in the flute. In the opening, strings creep in from a low dynamic intensity for anticipation. This is enhanced by the sparse flute melody, which follows a similar dynamic scheme. Inversely, the strings fade out at the end, moving from a high to low dynamic intensity. The intention here is to point to a sense of completion. Texturally speaking, the piano passages are rhythmically dense. They appear twice in the excerpt and function as transitions that provide textural contrast. The first transition starts with a root position arpeggio containing rhythmically displaced pitches. For example, this B skips to E and then returns to C. In normal order, C would appear before E. After the peak of the phrase, the pitch C is omitted so that E major is outlined. On the fourth beat, however, the pattern becomes more regular. Here we have a 5-octave descending root position sequence with alternating stepwise motion between B and C. B always leads to C so that the E major tonality is less prominent. In the second transition, the same techniques are used, but with fewer skips and the addition of F sharp. The F sharp is sourced from Lydian augmented and gives the passage that sweeter, more delicate tone mentioned earlier. The passage as a whole is made of 3 parts. 1, a 5-note sequence ascending 4 octaves, 2, a transitional passage, and 3, a 6-note sequence descending 5 octaves. Lastly, we'll cover the flute's melodic passages. Overall, the flute melodies are intended as the focal point of the excerpt. For each melody, I limited my selection of pitches to the Lydian augmented scale. Here, we have a flute melody that uses mostly stepwise motion. Pitches from the chord are shown in red, while pitches in blue are exclusive to the scale. Texturally, we can group this melody into 3 smaller phrases. Phrase 1 is sparse, phrase 2 is dense, and the closing phrase is sparse. In the excerpt's final moments, the root position chord in the strings is treated as a preparation for a cadence. Here, the root C resolves to B, giving us that E major triad. Lastly, the cadence is enhanced by the ascending 4th from B to E in the flute. This movement is often associated with a dominant tonic resolution, so it helps the moment feel more cadential. This concludes our Uneasy Harmony series. Thank you for watching, and for more details, see the description.